Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, thousands of people pay their respects to the former Israeli President Shimon Peres. We'll reveal which world leaders are heading to Israel for Peres'S funeral, and ILTV has a scoop on every contribution Peres has made to the Holy Land. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. The casket of the beloved former Israeli leader Shimon Peres has now been placed at the Israeli parliament, and thousands of visitors are lining up to pay their respects.
Today, the Israeli family is saying goodbye not just to their beloved president, not just to a family member. We are saying goodbye to the head of our family. In the Knesset, we are mourning not just the ninth president of this country, not just the former prime minister. We are mourning a member of Knesset who served in this house for the unbelievable number of 48 years. I doubt whether anyone will ever break this record.
Peres is one of the last surviving founding fathers of Israel, a beloved symbol of the Jewish state who's known for having developed the country's powerful armed forces and nuclear capabilities, before pursuing a path of peace with the Palestinians and winning a Nobel Peace Prize. The powerful Israeli leader passed away on Wednesday after suffering a stroke just 2 weeks before. Tourists and Israelis alike are mourning the loss.
We came to pay our respects to a wonderful man who we thought would carry on forever. We supported his vision. He was a man with a great dream to bring peace to this region, the new Middle East. Sadly, we've not reached that goal yet, but we still carry on with his aims.
Shimon Peres for me was a man of both practicality and ideals, and we hope to continue his pursuit for peace even after he's gone, but the world will be a poorer place without him, and for sure in Israel we don't have many leaders like him to look up to.
Peres'S casket will be accessible to the public as he lies in state from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. just outside of the Knesset. The main thoroughfare between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem will be intermittently closed throughout today and tomorrow, as around 80 world leaders make their way from Ben Gurion Airport to Jerusalem for Peres'S funeral. Israel has deployed thousands of police to secure the event, and they've already erected roadblocks across Jerusalem to help control the masses. While civilians make their way to Jerusalem to pay their respects to former Israeli President Shimon Peres, preparations are beginning for the leader's funeral on Friday. And now it looks like an unlikely individual will be attending the event, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The Palestinian leader has asked Israel if he can attend the funeral, and he's received a big yes from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Abbas's office sent their request today, according to the Israeli government. This will be the Palestinian leader's first official visit to Israel since September of 2010, and the first time that he will be shaking hands with the Israeli Prime Minister since last November. Abbas will most likely be joined by a delegation of senior Palestinian officials, including the head of Palestinian Intelligence and the Secretary General of the PLO. So for those of you who won't be able to make it to the beloved leader's funeral, what should you be expecting to see on your televisions tomorrow? The former president's body will be moved to Mount Herzl Cemetery on Friday morning at 8:30 a.m., and the official ceremony will begin at 9:30. After the eulogies, a procession will head out at 11 a.m. to the cemetery's Greater Leaders of the Nation section, where Peres will be buried between the late Prime Ministers Yitzhak Rabin and Yitzhak Shamir. Workers have already started preparing the gravesite for burial, as flags are being lowered at half-mast in Israel's parliament. Earlier, a special committee gathered to plan and coordinate the event.
מכנסים באופן רשמי את ועדת השרים לענייני טקסים וסמלים, שמרכינה היום את ראשה עם פטירתו של הנשיא התשיעי וראש הממשלה לשעבר שמעון פרס. אנחנו נערכים ללוויה מאוד גדולה, מורכבת, שמתואמת עם הרבה מאוד גורמים.
Joining us now is Yoram Dori, an Israeli strategic advisor that served closely with the former Israeli President Shimon Peres for 26 years. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
So it's no secret that in the early 1990s, before you started working with Shimon Peres, you were working with Yitzhak Rabin, and you weren't necessarily a great supporter of Peres. Years later, though, you became one of his closest confidants. How did that happen?
First of all, it's very difficult for me to explain it. I can only say what happened in the early 1990s. The primaries between Shimon Peres and Yitzhak Rabin. I, from 1977, was a very strong supporter of Yitzhak Rabin. I chaired his young campaign of Rabin against Shimon Peres, and for me, Shimon Peres was a devil.
He was a competitor, I mean.
Yes. Now, you have to understand that if you are involved in a political campaign, you see the other as an enemy.
Right, and it's a lot of blood and sweat and tears that you're putting into that. So.
My good friend, Nissim Zvili, who was head of the campaign of Shimon Peres, asked me whether I'm ready to be the spokesperson of the campaign. I told him that I have two conditions. One, that he is going also to attend the primaries 6 months later to the Knesset, so I can help him. And the second one, that I don't have to talk with Shimon Peres, to speak with Peres. Only with the heads of the campaign. I'll be part of this campaign, but I'm not his personal spokesperson. I'm not going to talk with him, nothing. He said, okay. It's the first day when I came to the office. There was a meeting. I said what I thought about the campaign at that time. And when the meeting finished, Peres took his suitcase and went to the car. His spokesperson at that time, a girl, took her papers and went to the car with him. He said, please stop. I want Yoram will come with me. He went to Ashkelon. You know, I'm very brave. But when a former prime minister at that time is asking you to join him in his car and to go to Ashkelon to give a negative answer and say, sorry, Mr. Peres, I have an agreement that I don't have to talk with you, it's a little bit too much. So I went into the car, and that was a love story that began at that time and finished yesterday.
What did he say in those moments that changed your mind about him?
I saw his first of all, his personality. He is a very unique person. That's something I noticed in this 50 minutes between Tel Aviv and Ashkelon. And he asked me to reach people on the phone, members of the party, that he wanted to ask them to vote for him. And I remember what happened, because I'm very polite, and I was young. Once I was also young. And, you know, I made a phone call. The one who answered said, member of the Knesset, Shimon Peres, wants to speak with Mr. Kirchuk, okay? He said, no, Yoram. That's not the way to deal with people. Whoever will answer, if it is a wife, please give me her on the phone. And second, not member of the Knesset, Shimon Peres, not Mr. Shimon Peres, not Prime Minister Peres. Say, Shimon wants to talk with her. And he took the phone and started the conversation and said, hi, Natasha, how are you? How are your kids? I remember 2 years ago there was a bar mitzvah. What are they doing now? And maybe your husband is at home. Can I speak with him? So
He was a person of the people. I mean, he knew how to connect.
First of all,
yeah.
you know, he knew all the 100,000 members of the Labour Party. He knew exactly with whom is he speaking, and do it randomically, not by lists that he knew. You know, he had the list. These 10 people are talking. He had the paper about everybody. No, he knew any activist of the party and any member of the party. Such Shimon Peres.
So, as strategic advisor, you helped Peres get elected as president. This is after he was prime minister. What do you think helped you guys win that election? What was it about Peres that made him such a good
First of
representative
all,
of the state?
really his personality. That's one. Second, he works very hard. I think he spoke with any one of the 119 members of the Knesset, maybe also to himself, and tried to convince him to vote for him. That's, you have to understand, it's person to person. He really spoke again and by phone, and a meeting, etc. And he is Shimon Peres. And this time, we didn't make mistakes, because the advisors are making mistakes and he is winning or losing. And we didn't make any mistake, and every single member of the Knesset, opposition or coalition, we were in the opposition and the coalition at that time, but he worked again and again and again, and he won.
So there's just been news that Abu Mazen, the Palestinian president, is going to be attending the funeral. He wants to be coming. What is your take on that? What is that going to mean for the future of Israeli-Palestinian relations, or will it not matter at all?
I don't think it won't matter. And, you know, it don't say anything to me. You know, it's a funeral of a friend. More, because in my relations with Shimon Peres in 26 years, he is no more a mentor. He becomes a friend. And when you are going to a funeral of a friend, you don't care who is coming, whether President of the United States, President of Russia, President of the Palestinians. It's not politics, it's friendship. And I know that Shimon Peres, by the way, always told me that there is a funeral politics, because there is a gathering and meeting of heads of states, and they are making politics. But what will come out from it,
Do you think,
I really don't
do you
know.
think that Abu Mazen, or Abbas, as Americans know him, coming to this funeral will send any message about the chance for peace in the future?
No, I don't think so. I think he's looking to the international community. He don't want to build an image that he is also anti-Shimon Peres. He will say, you saw, I came to the funeral of a peacemaker. I'm not ready to meet with Netanyahu because he's anti-peace. And
Yeah. Well,
on Sunday, nobody will remember that Abu Mazen was here or not, and what will happen. Nothing will happen.
Well, tomorrow is going to be a long day for everybody, and hopefully we can all get through this and continue to carry on his legacy.
We will get through. Nothing will happen. Tomorrow, now I'm speaking like Shimon Peres. The sun will shine again, and we will look forwards. And that's the way that we have to live. And you know, we are at the eve of Rosh Hashanah, which the beginning of the year, according to the Jews. We'll have, and I wish to everybody a Shana Tova, which is a happy New Year's, a peaceful years, and a secure year.
Yeah. In the name of Shimon Peres, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Israel is not alone in mourning the loss of the beloved leader. Around 80 world leaders are expected to attend former President Shimon Peres' funeral at Mount Herzl Cemetery, and American President Barack Obama has even made a special order in the United States in Peres' honor. Even though the leader of the United States will be in Israel for the funeral along with former President Bill Clinton and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, Obama has ordered all White House and federal U.S. flags to be flown half-mast in honor of the elder statesman, who's considered to be the last of Israel's founding fathers.
It is with great sadness that we learned that Shimon Peres passed away. The Israeli people lost a father, a grandfather of the Israeli nation. The world lost a man who fought for peace and for respect. Shimon Peres, who together with Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat won the Nobel Peace Prize, was a man who during his whole political life was a man who represented an idea, the idea of peace and cooperation.
In the meantime, leaders from across the globe are making their way to Israel for the funeral, which will have a maximum of 6,000 attendees. Among the leaders planning to attend the event are the French and British prime ministers, the presidents of Mexico and Germany, and even Britain's Prince Charles. Those who can't make it are expressing their condolences from abroad.
He dedicated his life to the cause of an Israel that would be safe and secure, democratic and free, and the homeland of the Jewish people. And he never lost that vision. And so many times when I was traveling over there so frequently to meet with the Prime Minister, he would express a frustration, frankly, with the pace and with the lack of the seizure of opportunities. But he always felt restrained and necessarily respectful of the incumbent Prime Minister, having been a Prime Minister himself. So he never inserted himself inappropriately in the dialogue. But I can tell you he was impatient for peace for his country and impatient for the lost, grabbed opportunities that were passing by.
All the way in China, the government is even recalling the significant contributions that Peres made to strengthening Israeli-Chinese ties.
I think the real problems are rather psychological than political. And I think we have to bring back trust and faith and optimism. History is a story of optimists, because history doesn't have reverse. Reverse is being guarded for the pessimists.
Rumor has it that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas may even attend the event if he receives an invitation from one of Peres's children. Yet many Arab leaders have remained silent about the Israeli leader's death. The presidents of both the Palestinian Authority and Egypt have expressed their condolences, but the King of Jordan has remained silent. Well, the world mourns the loss of the former Israeli leader. Hamas is doing just the opposite. In fact, the terror group is celebrating Peres's demise, claiming that his death is the end of an era of the Israeli occupation. Hamas is even urging Palestinians to hold a day of rage on Friday, while Shimon Peres's funeral is taking place. The call is supposed to mark the one-year anniversary of the beginning of last year's wave of terror attacks against Israel, which included stabbings and car rammings throughout the West Bank and Jerusalem. Over 35 innocent civilians were killed in the attacks, which launched in September of 2015. Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Suri says that the Palestinian people are overjoyed by Peres's death.
شمعون بيرس هو آخر القادة المؤسسين للاحتلال الإسرائيلي، ولذلك وفاته تمثل نهاية مرحلة في تاريخ الاحتلال وبداية مرحلة أخرى من الضعف والتراجع في ساحة الاحتلال. ونحن نؤكد على سعادة الشعب الفلسطيني برحيل هذا المجرم الذي تورط في الجرائم وفي سفك دماء أبناء شعبنا.
Hamas has sworn itself to the destruction of Israel, and in 2007 the terror group seized control of the Gaza Strip from the Palestinian Authority. While Hamas may be calling for more violence to mark the former Israeli president's death, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has sent a condolence letter to Peres's family, expressing sorrow and sympathy. Abbas says that Peres has long been a partner in reaching peace with the late Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. When most people hear the name Shimon Peres, they think peace, but what many people don't know is that the Israeli leader is also largely responsible for having turned the Jewish state into the military powerhouse that it is today. According to the head of the Mossad security agency, Peres's contribution towards strengthening the security of the state is immeasurable. Peres was the father of Israel's nuclear program that is considered critical to the country's survival. The Atomic Energy Commission just released a statement praising his fundamental contribution to the creation of the Negev Nuclear Research Center. Peres insisted Israel's ambiguous nuclear capability was essential in preserving peace by preventing war. He started off his role as one of the Jewish state's greatest protectors with his service in the pre-state army. After Israel's founding, security officials say it was Shimon Peres who designed the character and values of the defense ministry, when at the age of 29 he became its youngest director general in history. His purchase of fighter jets was instrumental in securing Israel's victory in the 1967 Six-Day War, at a time most countries didn't want to sell weapons to the young Jewish state. He then went on to obtain other badly needed arms such as tanks, artillery, and radar equipment. As defense minister in 1976, Peres helped devise Operation Entebbe to save victims on a plane that had been hijacked by Palestinian and German terrorists. The mission was recognized as one of the most calculated and important in Israeli history, which raised the prestige of the IDF throughout the world. After the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in 1995, Peres became both acting prime minister and acting defense minister. During that trying period, he commanded the IDF's Operation Grapes of Wrath against Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. After his election as president in 2007, and ever since, Shimon Peres always backed the nation's security services, while also serving foremost as a leader of the Israeli Peace Initiative. While the former Israeli leader has worked hard to keep Israel safe and secure through a strong military, it's his fight for peace that is perhaps his biggest legacy. Even though he twice served as prime minister, Peres is perhaps best known for his work as foreign minister in 1993. It was then that he negotiated the Oslo peace accords that he believed would end the decades of conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts, along with Israel's then Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. Despite Rabin's assassination by an Oslo opponent and the horrific explosion of violence with the Palestinians during the Second Intifada, Peres held fast to his unshakable confidence that the two sides would eventually find a way to resolve their differences.
When I negotiated peace on behalf of the State of Israel, he was the one saying to me not to give up and continue even in difficult days, in times of terror, in this tough neighborhood, until his last day. He was not willing to give up peace.
He was a very unselfish man. I feel like his entire life was dedicated to this country. And that's why it's a personal loss and a collective loss.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone like him, and I don't think I've ever learned in history about anyone like him. It was the combination of actually making history and then being the person who actually envisions it and carries it out. You don't have people like that. So it's, I mean, he is rare and he does stand out even in the world of world leaders.
It may seem impossible, but Peres has made even more major contributions to the Jewish state that have had a big impact on the economy and Israel's reputation as a startup nation. During his 1985 rotating premiership, Peres is credited with transforming Israel into a modern economy by pushing through a complex stabilization plan. The platform saw the revision of the currency and succeeded in halting raging hyperinflation. Many of the foremost financial experts say the program was so impressive, it served as a major turning point that swept Israel from a third world status to a world-class economy. During his later presidency, Peres became such a beacon of technology that he laid the foundation for the state's ascent to its widely recognized reputation as a startup nation. And Shimon Peres had another side as an avid lover of sports. In addition to being considered the #1 fan of every team in the Jewish state, he also realized the critical role sports can play in fostering coexistence. He always made time to meet with visiting international athletes whom he viewed as instruments of peace. After leaving office, the Peres Center for Peace continued the tradition by promoting numerous sports initiatives as an opportunity to bridge differences. Every single soccer match in Israel's Premier and national leagues will mark PERES'S passing this weekend, with a moment of silence held in honor of their #1 fan.
Okay.
And now a warm welcome to Rabbi David Stav, who will guide us through this week's Torah portion. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So, to begin, tell us about this week's parasha.
Well, this week's portion is a very unique one. It's actually the parasha that describes the covenant that all Jews went into before they entered the land of Israel. And that's what makes this parasha very unique, because it describes how all old people, young people, people that were alive then, and people that were not alive and actually were never born then, and maybe you are not born even yet now. We will be born in a decade, 2 decades, maybe in the next century, and all of them actually are committed to that covenant, although they've never been there.
Interesting. Now, what is the message or lesson that we can take from that?
I think that what the parasha is telling us, that to be a part of the Jewish nation is to be part of the Jewish destiny, and it's something that we haven't chosen to be Jewish. It's something that is an integral part of our lives, no matter whether we decided to be a part of this or not. Now, a private man or woman could decide for themselves that they don't want to be a part of that story, so they will separate from the Jewish people. And even then, the Torah says that it's not so clear that it will be easy or it will be possible to try to escape from the Jewish faith. But this could happen. But if someone wants to be a part of the Jewish covenant, then it means that he has to choose to be a part of that covenant.
Now, it's interesting that you speak about this, because it talks a lot about the unity of the people in Israel and kind of the obligation of the Jewish diaspora around the world to this state. Much like PERES'S legacy, this is kind of something that he advocated for throughout his history serving this country. How can we apply these concepts to our daily lives?
Well, I think that, and it's very unique that we are talking in a day after Shimon Peres passed away, and one day before his funeral. I don't know if people know one of the songs that, maybe the only song that Shimon Peres asked that will be sang in his funeral, is the song of Avinu Malkeinu from the prayer of Rosh Hashanah and the first 10 days of Chodesh Tishrei, of the month of Tishrei. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, please forgive us for what we are and the way we behave, even though we were not doing as well as you expected, but still have compassion on us and treat us in the right way. I think Shimon Peres, what was so typical for him is the deep concern about the Jewish future, about the Jewish faith, and about the Jewish norms of moral lives in Israel. And I think he cared a lot about the way Israel's image will be not only for the sake of the United Nations or the United States, so they will not be mad at us or will not pressure us, but he really cared about the Jewish image all over the world, because he felt that a part of our mission is to come back to the land of Israel after 2000 of exile, and to be a real continuity of the moral values that the prophets and the head of the prophets, Moshe Rabbeinu, has taught us about them. To be a good nation between God and us, and to be a good nation between ourselves. And I think that was one of the motives that led Shimon Peres throughout his career.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, Rav.
You're very welcome. Shabbat Shalom.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Many things can be said about Israel's 9th Israeli president, the late and great Shimon Peres, but arguably the most often used adjective would be visionary. And that's why today our Hebrew word is chazon, which means vision in Hebrew. Not everybody is aware of the great many things that PERES'S Chazon has inspired in Israel. His entire political policy can be summed up by his famous statement: when you have two alternatives, the first thing you have to do is to look for the third that you didn't think about, the one that doesn't exist. Indeed, Peres had a profound way of turning even the darkest of times and moments of clarity and hope, because he knew and said, long before the Game of Thrones character Tyrion Lannister, that you don't make peace with friends, you make it with very unsavory enemies. So in honor of Shimon Peres's memory, remember to hold on to your chazon and apply it whenever you find it most morally relevant. Because Peres would have told you the most important thing in life is to dare, the most complicated thing in life is to be afraid, and the smartest thing in the world is to try and be a moral person. What a chazon. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. The weekend is finally here. Friday is expected to be sunny with a high of 86 degrees. The sun should stay out through Friday with the temperature going up to 90. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.76 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter on ILTV.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and Shana Tova.